What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. I've made no secret that I really appreciate Pokemon abilities. They were a fantastic feature that has kept the series fresh with new additions each generation that are just as important as the Pokemon themselves. But there are surprisingly still a cornucopia's worth of signature abilities, meaning that only one Pokemon or one evolutionary family has access to it, making it extra special. Some of those are incredible, and others are almost a handicap. So, here are the top 6 best and worst signature abilities. Number 6 worst, Zen Mode. Darmanitan is a decent Pokemon, especially for being the third fiery primate in 2 generations. But its signature ability, Zen Mode, is not very good. First of all, let's look at the description of said ability. Zen Mode changes the Pokemon's shape when its HP is less than half. There are so many things wrong with that. First of all, I'm assuming this is quite literal, and that the only actual function Zen Mode performs is cosmetic, and it's only just a lucky happenstance that the forms were programmed with different stats and as the Psychic type. Secondly, Zen Mode only activates when its HP is below half. That is in no way a reliable means of combat. Hope you weren't planning on giving Darmanitan a leftovers, because if it gains more health, it will revert to its standard form. And it's even less sustainable when you realize that Zen Mode is much slower than the regular form. So not only do you have to try and battle at half health, but you'll probably be moving second, too. And finally, this is all the more ridiculous when you remember that Darmanitan has received its popularity almost exclusively because it's an outstanding physical attacker. Zen Mode swaps this so that the physical stat is crippled in favor of the special. But, you know, that makes sense to boost those 2 special moves it learns through level up. So you basically just halve your skills as a mixed attacker so that you can only be used in circumstances outside of your control. But hey, at least it gave us an ability that starts with a Z, so I guess that's something? Number 6 best, Stamina. Getting hit is unavoidable. It's a simple fact of Pokemon battling. But imagine if every time you did, you got better because of it. Stamina is an ability that raises the defense of a Pokemon every time it's hit with an attack. You get a free defense curl or harden whenever an opponent strikes you, meaning next time it'll do even less damage. Best case scenario would be for a weak Pokemon to use Fury Attack, hitting 5 times, making you an instant juggernaut. The only Pokemon with this ability right now is the Mudbray and Mudsdale line, which made using one in the game super fun. But I can't imagine it will stay that way for long. I'm sure they'll come up with an excuse to give it to someone else in Gen 8. The only potential downside is that it only raises the physical defense, even when hit with special moves, which is likely what you'll be hit with, seeing as how Grass, Water, and Ice will be the only thing super effective against a Mudsdale, and those are notoriously full of special moves. But that might change should the new ones come in with alternate weaknesses, further increasing the usefulness of this ability. So truthfully, I hope this list becomes outdated soon, with this great ability spreading out to even more Pokemon. Number 5 worst, Color Change. The signature ability of Kecleon makes sense because it's a chameleon, and that it actually changes colors. But the color change ability has no real connection to colors, rather it changes the Pokemon's type. There are other ways of doing this, notably Protean, which is popular due to the precision with which it can be operated at your leisure. Color change has no such benefit, but leaves you completely at the mercy of your foe. Color change turns the Pokemon into the same type as the last move you were hit. This can be tricky for an 8-year-old playing the game for the first time. After an encounter or two, you can easily manipulate this setup to your own advantage, turning this ability into a liability for poor Kecleon. Say you hit it with a fire move. Instead of spamming it again and again to whittle it down, you know what fire types are weak to, so you would just immediately off it with an Earthquake. It's an alright idea in theory, but the execution just made poor Kecleon a target for whatever circular type effectiveness you can throw at it. trapping it in a perpetual stage of disadvantage. No wonder we've never seen anyone else saddled with this prison of an ability. Number 5 best, Toxic Boost. This entry, more than anything, is a public service announcement, because I had no idea this ability even existed. Toxic Boost, as one might guess, increases the Pokemon's physical attack by 50% when the Pokemon is poisoned. It's got a pretty rad Japanese name in Poison Rampage. But of more interest to me is the exclusivity of this ability. Of course, it is the signature ability of Zangoose. Its hidden ability, actually. Normally Zangoose has immunity, which completely prevents poisoning, and makes perfect sense considering its mortal rival, Seviper. Not being susceptible to your enemy's primary attack certainly gives you a fighting chance, but apparently, every so often, a Zangoose will come along that is actually stronger because of it. I can only imagine that those ones rise to the top as leaders of the pack. Even if they might eventually succumb to the slow ailment, it will certainly take out as many of the enemy as they can, especially seeing as how Zangoose's attack is already its highest stat by a decent margin. I could never decide who would win in this war, but in light of this, I think I'd give the edge to Zangoose. But I can't wrap up this PSA without also mentioning the almost identical hidden ability they introduced at the same time called Flare Boost, which works the same but with burns. Except for some reason this is the signature ability of Drifloon and Drifblim, which I don't understand. I guess you could throw out an argument of flames with hot air balloons or something, but it doesn't make nearly as much sense, nor does it share in the poetic justice of Toxic Boost. Number 4 worst, Stall. Sableye is one of those Pokemon that is neither beloved nor offensive to me. It's a creepy little weird alien thing, which is great, but then every time I battle one, it's super annoying, especially if it's a Mega. But I'm willing to bet that's just because none of them had their signature ability, Stall. Stall makes the Pokemon go last in the turn. How? What? Is this ability even useful? Every now and then, there might be a Pokemon that can actually take advantage of its low speed. But you cannot convince me that Sableye is one that should have this ability. It has maybe 5 moves in total, from TMs, move tutors, and breeding, that could benefit from going last. Which is insane because the almost singular reason anyone uses a standard Sableye is for its hidden ability in Prankster, which gives it advanced priority. Sableye has no tactical reason to want to take its time and guarantee getting hit, when the contrary is clearly demonstrated. And there's nothing inherent to Sableye's lore that I'm aware of that would make it inclined to be so sluggish. So having it held back in such a way makes me think that one of the developers secretly had some kind of grudge against this otherwise fine pocket monster. Number 4 best, Parental Bond. There is arguably no Pokemon that benefited from the advent of Mega Evolution more than Kangaskhan. I mean, it was a good Pokemon before, don't get me wrong. Definitely in the upper echelon of normal types. But with its Mega, it jumped onto almost every team in the competitive scene instantly. And this all has to do with its signature ability upon Mega Evolving, Parental Bond. This aptly named ability has the connection between the parent and the child so strong that they each attack the opponent, with the child's attack dealing half damage of the first. You might see how a 50% buff to every attack might have been appealing enough to cause such a boost in this Pokemon's battling prowess, but the story doesn't end there. The icing on the cake is that on top of the extra damage, each of the 2 hits has their own individual chance to be a critical hit or to activate additional effects, meaning you have twice the chance to confuse or flinch or whatever else you're trying to do to ruin your enemy's day. And you gotta remember that since this is a Mega Kangaskhan, there is a massive move pool with which to play around and cause all sorts of mayhem. One of the favorites was the move Power Up Punch, which raises the attack every time it's used, meaning that even at half power, Kangaskhan would get 2 full boosts. Even if you were boosting as well, you would soon get ludicrously outclassed in this war of attrition. The only real downsides would be that you get a double dose of chip damage, like any Rocky helmets they might have, and after Gen 6, they nerfed the power of the second hit to 25%. So if the worst thing you can say about the ability is that they thought it was too good, it's probably one to watch out for. Number 3 worst, Wimp Out. Wimp Out is of course the signature ability of Wimpod. It causes the Pokemon to instantly be ejected from the battle should it fall below half health. In trainer battles, the Pokemon will switch out with another on the team, and in the wild, the battle ends. So this is just like Dragon Tail or Roar, or even the item, the eject button. And of course this ability has the same functionality as Emergency Exit, in its evolved form as Golisopod. Simply put, this is just terrible. All of those methods that I just mentioned have one very crucial thing in common. They're all voluntary. I get to choose when I use one of these options to either end the battle or switch things up. I honestly can't see how this could be useful. Generally, if I want a Pokemon in combat, it's because I wanted to use that Pokemon. The only possible use I could see is that you'd be able to use the powerful priority move First Impression more than once on Golisopod, but it's only twice, because these Wimp Out abilities only activate once per battle. Maybe it could work if you're switch training a Wimpod, but remember, that only works in trainer battles. And I actually have a personal story related with this ability. I was training up various Pokemon to complete the Pokédex in Sun version. I was in the haunted store for where you have Acerola's trial. Now, I was on a family trip in the car at the time, and hey, I'm no jerk, so I had the sound off and the brightness turned all the way down. I looked down after a bit, and I see that I finally ran into a Mimikyu. I still needed to catch one for the Dex, so not wanting to kill it, I switched in my weakest party member at the time, which happened to be a Wimpod. And it was promptly attacked and the battle ended. This wouldn't be such a big deal, except that later, looking through the Dex, I saw that I had information for a shiny Mimikyu. I don't ever remember scanning that QR code in or anything like that, so just in case, I painstakingly hunted for another shiny Mimikyu and finally got one. So I can't ever say for certain, but Wimp Out might have made me fail a rare shiny. And if any ability can do that, it is a huge letdown for me. But, speaking of Mimikyu, number 3 best, Disguise. There is a ridiculous inventory of signature abilities in Sun and Moon, especially considering the small number of new Pokemon that were added in those games. One of the most adored new Pokemon is the Pikachu wannabe ghost type, Mimikyu. This small fairy type uses old Pikachu merchandise to dress itself up as one so that other people might want to be its friend. Otherwise, looking at its true form would kill a person. This gives it the ability Disguise. Disguise enables Mimikyu to take a hit, breaking the disguise in the process, but without any damage. Only after will Mimikyu be hurt by any attacks. This is very handy because it allows Mimikyu to do whatever it wants completely for free. If you want to hurt them on the first turn, you can. Or, if you want to set up, you will definitely be able to get it off without any downsides. This is a common tactic in competitive, and Swords Dance Shadow Claw, or something else, has taken out many an enemy. Bearing in mind that Mimikyu can also learn Substitute, or hold on to a Focus Sash, so that it can double down on the free turns and really cause some serious mayhem, doing whatever they want while you desperately try to get to the center where the Pokemon is actually vulnerable. It's such a specific origin behind this ability that I can't see it being spread to anything else, unless some other superfans come out to play. So right now, I'd have to say that Mimikyu won out as the king of the Gen 7 signature abilities, and one that I anticipate as one of the all-time greats for many generations to come. Number 2 worst, Defeatist. The name alone does not bode well. Defeatist is the signature ability of the Archeops line, and it lowers the user's attack and special attack if their health is below half. You heard that right! Instead of any decent ability like the ones that the starters have, that would boost something, Defeatist punishes you for taking a beating. That will show you not to be good at battle, will make you even worse! It's not enough that it's just the attack that's lowered, but they had to include special attack for good measure. Which is especially insulting because those are specifically Archeops' best stats. And the worst part might be that there's no choice in the matter. This is the only ability that Archeops can have. Most Pokemon out there will have one or two abilities that can occur naturally. And a good portion of them will have a possible hidden ability as well. Not all of them are home runs, but you'll generally find one that's useful. But Archeops can't have any other options. It doesn't even get a hidden ability. I don't understand. Is there something in the lore that makes it so easily downtrodden? I mean, there are Pokemon with hindrances so that they aren't too overpowered, but plenty of Pokemon that are stronger than Archeops get off scot-free. So I really don't get the obvious prejudice against this prehistoric bird, being forced into such a demeaning situation that it is literally defined by giving up when things don't go its way. Number 2 best, stance change. Aegislash was on the fence for me right up until the point that I used one. It is so stupidly good. Even the more rudimentary stages of it are great, but Aegislash is a monster. And that's largely due to stance change. This signature ability allows it to switch between its shield form and its blade form. It's an impenetrable wall and a devastating super weapon all at the same time. Both forms are so impressive in their own right, mostly due to the stat distributions. Shield form has 150 in defense and special defense, which are insanely high, but when it switches to blade form, the stats flip and the 150s go to the attack. This gives the Haunted Sword the ability to transition between one of the strongest and one of the most resilient Pokemon on a whim. To alter these states and use the ability properly, it requires the signature move of Aegislash, King Shield, which puts it above other form-changing abilities because you decide when it happens. This move protects the user from any damage, but also lowers the attack of the aggressor, so you get the smug satisfaction of being immune to their feeble attack and punish them for even trying. Which will only further complement the outrageous defenses you already boast in shield form. The way to change back is to select any other attacking move, but blade form won't activate until it's your turn. Meaning if they go first, you'll still have your defenses sky high, but if you do go first, you'll probably just kill it anyway. There is a reason that Aegislash was banned in competitive. Stance change literally made it too good. One could argue that this ability might see wider distribution one day, but I hope it won't, especially if it still requires King Shield to work, because this ability perfectly exemplifies the scary Pokemon and properly displays why it's one of the best in the game. Number 1 worst. Without a doubt, the signature ability of Regigigas has to be the worst in the entirety of the Pokemon world. That distinction would have gone to Truant if not for our forgettable buddy Durant joining the party. But Slow Start has to be the cruelest method of shackling a Pokemon I've ever seen. For the first 5 turns of battle, this Pokemon has their attack and speed halved. They couldn't just settle for slow or weak, so they had to make it both. And it's worse than it sounds because it's not just the first 5 turns of a battle, but the first 5 turns after you send it out. Meaning if the opponent has Roar or anything else like it, they can send you right back to square one. Sure, you could maybe try to set up and get rid of the nerfs, or maybe hope to wait it out with Protect or something, but odds are that the enemy will find a way to make you faint before you get a chance to get going. I mean, just think about it. How many people do you see using a Regigigas? Or even worse, how many people do you see with this Pokemon in their list of favorites? This ability is so bad that it has affected this Pokemon's general popularity to the point that people don't even like it, just based on how terrible it is to use in battle. Most of the time, if people really love a Pokemon, they'll choose it even if it might not be the best. but that doesn't seem to be as prominent with Regigigas. I understand they're not wanting to make this thing too good in battle, but hey, here's an idea. Just don't make it that good. Lower its base attack stat, or speed, or something so that it's still usable in some way before half a dozen turns go by. Otherwise, this legend is stuck being worse than most regular Pokemon, which is a real shame. Number 1 best, Wonder Guard. There's no question that Wonder Guard is one of the best abilities in Pokemon, and I would argue that it might be the best. Wonder Guard makes it so that the Pokemon cannot be afflicted by any moves other than those that are super effective against it. Right now, this ability is exclusive to Shedinja, the ghostly offshoot of the Nincada line. Now, this ability may not be considered as good by some, because you might argue that they wouldn't be using anything but super effective moves against the target anyway. But sometimes, Pokemon don't always have the coverage necessary to hit everything. And in the case of new regions or more novice trainers, they might not know what types would actually work against certain Pokemon. So if you're able to get it in against the right thing, you can wreck through a whole team with a Shedinja. Currently, this ability may not seem like it's all that great because Shedinja does only have 1 hit point, the only Pokemon to have such, actually. So literally any hit will take it out. Even entry hazards or weather will do it in. But if Wonder Guard were able to be on any other Pokemon with more than 1 hit point, it could certainly be incredible. But then I guess it wouldn't be considered a great signature ability, and one that is the envy of all others. So, those are the top 6 best and worst signature abilities in Pokemon. What other signature abilities do you find most interesting? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!